This afternoon, we're going to start us off getting to understand the situation with Hong Kong. How many of you are affiliated, or if you're from Hong Kong or with family members from Hong Kong? You raise your hand. Okay, so this is really close to the heart. Amen? Very close to the heart. And with us is Dr. Fook. Is that correct pronunciation? Luke. Dr. Luke. Okay, so let's put our hands together and welcome Dr. Luke, okay?
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Reverend Yu, for the big wind blow. I think we can keep awake for another 20 minutes. So I'm going to share some data about the churches in Hong Kong. So the data are taken from church census in 2014, and I think it is quite updated. The first time the Hong Kong churches took the census date back to 1977, when COVID first started. Their headquarters is in Hong Kong, and then at that time they want to gather data, so they started a very simple survey and then get the data. And only after 20 years later that we Hong Kong pastors have the burden to have a more thorough survey. So the first one was done in 1989. And then after that, the Hong Kong Church Renewal Movement started and then take over this survey. So I serve as the coordinator of this survey group for the past 20 years. So what I'm going to share now is some of the data we found in the last year. Now, the purpose of taking the data is to know what's happening when we compare with the past few years. And then when we are comparing, we hope to find some trends or identify some issues the Hong Kong churches are facing. So after the data was taken, and then around 10 to 12 pastoral leaders in Hong Kong gathered together to discuss the meaning of this figure. So some of the meanings are interpreted from the data. So this is the basic data about the number of churches. You know, the church growth slows down in the past few years. So this is only Chinese-speaking churches. So we also did a survey on the English-speaking churches. We got around maybe 50 to 70 churches. And then if we count the Philippine churches together, we have another, I think, close to 100 Philippine churches. Those are the Philippine house workers working in Hong Kong. They have churches like that. So that is the profile of the Hong Kong churches. So the growth rate is no good at all. We are not satisfied when we look at this. And then these are the English churches. They have another separate survey. And today, I just try to introduce the Chinese churches data. So altogether, we have 1,347 churches. And the types of church building, you know, in Hong Kong, we cannot afford to buy a piece of land and build an independent building. So 49%, or almost 50% of the churches own their buildings. Like it means an independent church building or a private flat, second floor, third floor, something like that. So half of them, they owned it, they bought it. And then the others, they use NGOs venues, for example, schools, social service venue. That is a way to not to pay too much money to buy the land or houses. They can focus the money in evangelism. One thing is 30.9% they use residential buildings, office building, and 23.5% of churches use school venues. In Hong Kong, it is very unique. The Hong Kong government would allow church organization or even church to operate a school. So they pay the money for the salary, and then we churches will receive the school and operate it following the regulations of the government. So this is a very good opportunity for the Hong Kong churches to reach to the young students, primary schools, secondary schools, and so on. So we noticed that 23.5% use these church avenues. And then for the financing, it's okay. Most of the churches self-finance. Only a few churches, they need mission support. And then for the worship attendance, so since Donald McGowan wrote his book, Church Growth, churches in Hong Kong began to count church attendance. So these figures, I think, is very accurate. Because for this survey of the 1,300 churches, we have returned about more than 90% of the churches responded. So the figures should be very accurate. So we noticed that the worship attendance, those worshiping in Sunday worship, and then we have a drop. That is because the 1997 crisis, and after that, it grew rapidly, but this time it plateaus a little bit. That is something we observed, that something has gone wrong for these few years, and then we have to further discuss what hinders the growth. And then these are the actual figures, and the increase is only about 12,000. And the worship attendance is 300,000, which is around 3 to 4% of the total population of Hong Kong. And then the number of congregations, it is somehow those church members and attendants contacted by the church. That means we have them in our address, mailing address. So it doesn't mean membership. It doesn't mean church attendance. It means those we keep close contact. So this figure is more or less the same with the Sunday worship. So we have different types of figures. One is what we call the membership, but this is not accurate. We still have a lot of names who is now in heaven. We still do not delete their names. This is our way of doing. So this one is not accurate. But look at the other three. They're more or less the same. One is those who reside in Hong Kong. That means all the churches, they have their mailing address with them. This one is worship, this one is congregation, because some people may attend the church without attending Sunday worship. So we have different sets to measure. And then the size of the church. We noticed that different sizes of the church may affect the growth. Therefore, we try to delineate the church. So this one is from 1 to 50 attending Sunday service. This one is, the blue color is 100 to 200. And then the green color is 51 to 100. And then this one is 200 to 500. And this one is over 500. And this one is over 1,000. this what we call the mega church in Hong Kong. So this is the absolute figure of the number of churches. So if we look at the picture, 70% of the churches are under 200 people. So that is the what we say, the size of the church is around this figure. Therefore, we hope to focus on those churches with attendance under 200 so as to equip those pastors so that they can have a potential to continue to grow. And this is the church size and worship attendance. So we have two sets of figures. This is 2009, this is 2014. So we found out that the difference, for example, this is 140, this now is 167. Why the small size church increase is because new churches are usually small in size. And then 330, 332 is dropping because some of the churches move up to the other. This is 413, this is 408. Of course, some of the churches move to the next category. And then this one is 276 increasing, 59 to 72 increasing, 32 to 34 increasing. That means we see the optimistic side of the churches. Big churches are growing up, and then starting with small churches. And this is the English-speaking churches. So we did a survey about this is the first time we did an English church survey. And with different sizes, we also noticed that some churches are quite big. 7 churches are what we call over 1,000. But the majority is around 100 to 200. And about the age, so we try to compare the age of our congregation with the age of the general Hong Kong population. This kind of comparison is to know that which area we are weak, we have to pay more attention, and which area we are happy with, so we make a comparison. So these categories are taken under the Hong Kong population census. We use the same category just for the purpose of comparison. So we see that this age group, 45 to or 60 above. So these two groups, this one is 31.4 and this one is 16. So almost half of the age population in our churches are over 45. So we see aging church in Hong Kong. So the problem is about the young people. What happened to the young people? We still have 12.4% under 15, 12.8% under 15 to 24, and this is 25 to 44. We still have another half. So this is the way we try to identify our issues. Now, if you make a comparison with the past, in the past, so dating back to 1999, so we have 1999, 2004, 2009, 2014, we see the under 15, they maintain more or less the same. 15 to 24 from 19.3% dropping to 12.8. Now that is where we identify the youth are dropping in our churches, even though I think their size is more or less the same as the society, but we are alerted by this. So this is 41.6% dropping to 27%. So these are the two areas that we churches need to tell the pastors this age bracket is dropping. There must be something wrong. Think about how to continue. And then this group is growing, 15% to 31, and 9% to 16. So I'm one of these persons here. So I've been here for the church for a long time. And then if we do not notice the changes and we do not pay any effort to the dropping, and then the church eventually aging or even dying. And about that baptism, this is another thing that interests us a lot. So we got actual figures from the past 3 years. And then when we try to project, because the figures are from 3 years, we try to project it to 5 years. That means we have around 80,000 baptized. But you look at the attendance. This was 2004, the attendance is 200,000. 2009, it is 20, almost 30. And then this year, we should have, if we have maybe 80,000 increase, we should have around 400,000 people attending. But the figure is missing. So some people are missing from the church. They are baptized. But that is another area that we are trying to focus, how to interpret the dropouts in these 2 years. So that worship service is more or less the same. But since within these 5 years, we have 80,000 baptized in the church. So it doesn't mean that the people baptized are gone. It might mean the other peoples are dropping out. So that is another figure that tells us something. So another interesting thing is pastoral workers. There is a low job in the world that constantly has a vacancy of around 10%. So it also means that being a pastoral worker, it is very challenging. That's why there is always vacancy. So we have around 7,000, and the vacancy is, with the vacancy, we should have 80 to 90, 8 to 9,000 pastoral workers, I mean in the church only. And then we also observed the duration of the stay of the pastoral worker in the church. So this is 1 to 2 years. The turnover rate is 22.9%. That means those people working in the church, 1 in every 4, they will leave for another job for 2 years. So that also poses another question, that how are we going to help the pastoral workers to adjust to their first job? So the other figures, I think it is reasonable. When we compare with the past years, it will be okay. And another issue is the senior pastor succession. So we got some figure, we asked them. And then that's why we are trying to focus on leadership succession in Hong Kong in order to continue the kind of pastoral work and growth. And then the youth dropout. That is the one of the questions we asked, and we identify some of the questions. 34.1% of the responding churches indicated that the youth dropout is during their college study. That means when they go to the college, a percentage dropout. They started working in the society, another large percentage dropout. These are the 2 areas we should focus. And what kind of training? This is discipleship training. Around 50% indicated that that is the major task for them in the future. And discipleship training. So identify pastoral workers, understand that this is one of the tasks they need to focus. About mission, mission, we have around 60% having mission committees, and then the offering is okay. So the figures we are quite satisfied, but we still need challenges from the church. So these are the activities we asked in the questionnaire, and then we found out the figures and compare with the last few years. The figures doesn't change too much. And about what we say missionary. Time is almost up, and this is the number of missionaries. And involving in different types of field in terms of mission work. And working in different areas. And some statistics about working among those countries. And then church planting is not challenging, is dropping, I think. And the lifespan of the church is becoming aging. Okay, the final observation. Sense of discipleship and mission is high, but engagement is weak because of lack of passion. So it is, we have it here, but it is not in our heart. So we have to bridge this gap. Aging population, dropping out of young people, leadership succession, and political and social issues pose some reminder for our churches. So that is the basic introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Luke. So now we're about to start our next session on ARMD. Before we start, I'd like to know how many of you are ministering out of the marketplace context. Marketplace context. Why don't you raise your hand so we know that you're in the marketplace? Marketplace? Okay. Okay. The rest of us, are we all ministering out of the church and church context? Most people are from church context? And other than the church and marketplace, where are you? What is it? Mission. You're in the world. All right, mission, raise your hand. Mission. All right. So, good. Today we're going to hear from Dr. Reverend Desmond So. He's our first Dr. Reverend. Let's give him a warm welcome, okay? All right.
Thank you. And there's one more category, and that is those from seminary. And those from seminary, like me, now how do I work this? You see, the first thing I encounter is, how do I work this? Is because we cannot do the things, so therefore we teach. Oh, press up and down, okay? Like that, okay, all right. In Indonesia, to be fair, I was a tent maker in Indonesia, and I planted about 6 international schools. So maybe that's the reason why they asked me to talk about marketplace and missions. Just give me 1 second. Right, so that's what I'll be doing. Now, if you want to download my PowerPoint, you can always click on this QR code, all right? So I'm not sure what the rest have done, but you can just snap. Nothing is confidential here. Patrick. Take as many as you want, but I'm going to piggyback on what Patrick has said, and some of the speakers have said earlier. I bring you warm greetings from Singapore. Anyone from Singapore? I know several of my friends. Yay! Majulah Singapura. Okay, right. Well, there are 8 countries celebrating their national or Independence Day this month, so I better be careful. All right, okay, enough of that. Okay, there are 2 summary reports and 2 issues that I want to highlight in 20 minutes. And this, to me, is by far the most challenging thing I have to do. Now, I'm a visual learner, right? So I need to have visual things. I was given 2 reports, and these 2 reports are collectively known as the Jireh Marketplace, or you pronounce it Yere, Marketplace Ministry by Reverend Tony Tay, and the Daniel Institute. And the evaluator, the person who wrote it, is Reverend Zhong Chi Wei. All right, you can find this link in the Koei website and a quick summary of what they do. But because I'm a visual learner, I just quickly summarize for you what that thing is. I'll give you a timeline. I took pains to look into all this and give you a visual layout of what happens. Now, this is the Jireh Marketplace Ministry, JMMI timeline. It began in 2005. This is the early days of the Tay and Chin family. They are business people. They came together and they decided to start a hotel called Auckland City Hotel in New Zealand. All right, so anyone from New Zealand? Hey, have you stayed there before? Is it good? Right, in April 2008, ACH is a 4-star hotel, is finally completed with 138 hotel rooms and managed by Jireh Hospitality Limited, JHL. But you also know that in 2008, that is when the US had an influenza, and what happened is the rest of us had pneumonia, and the whole world's economy kind of like freeze all over. All of us got sick, very sick, and the global financial crisis, the subprime world, really wreaked havoc to a lot of companies, including, I believe, JHL. But despite that, and in spite of that, they continue to persevere. And in fact, in 2009, they started their weekly Bible studies. And from there on, they had their daily management prayer meeting started. So it started off as kind of like a family business run thing that grew in its influence in the circle which they are able to manage. All right, so the management themselves were Christians, and they tried to influence the rest of the people there. Now, I won't say too much about that until later on, the pros and cons of that, but very quickly, what happened is that some of their partners, especially the restaurant owners, because in the hotel they have restaurants, some of the restaurant owners were saved as a result of that, and they went on to disciple other people as well. So this is when, in 2011, the founder himself finally decided to start off the JMMI, and he founded that to free himself up to do the ministry. And so because of that, he started off the chapel services. Worship team was formed during February 2011, and in 2013, Pastor Tony Tay handed the baton over to Ross Chin to run the hotel. Right? Do we have someone here? He's here. Oh, he's here. All right, Ross. Okay. I hope I'm not misrepresenting your
Totally wrong.
totally wrong. Blame me on the report, not me. Right. And then, of course, what I liked about it is that they really tried to partner with other organizations, knowing that they cannot do the work by themselves. So to me, in a quick nutshell, what are some of the strengths? They really persevered on. They had a good focus. They had a good business model. They went and partnered with many organizations. They were able to do cross-cultural ministry because of the employees that they had. And also, they were a good testimony in the city of Auckland. Now, having said that, having run businesses myself, I can tell you there are also dilemmas. And in the report, they themselves also mentioned briefly in passing what are some of those dilemmas that they have. For example, when a business decision has to be made, and you're identified as a Christian organization, and needless to say, you have to have excellence in whatever you do. So if you need to remove some people because they're underperforming, despite mediation and all that, what should you do? You know, you know what I mean, right? The hire and fire kind of mentality. So it kind of contradicts the whole ethos of what they are trying to do in some ways, right? So this is the Jireh Marketplace Ministry timeline, and I will move on to the Daniel Institute. Now, from a microscopic picture of what is happening, now we're moving now towards an entire movement, and this is pretty complicated. Bear with me, I'm going through a timeline from 1992 all the way down to today. Right, very quickly, I just want to summarize for you. In 1992, the year 2000 gospel movement was started in Taiwan itself, and Reverend James Xia, in fact, he spoke yesterday as well, okay? So he started with 1,200 participants coming together, and in October 1995, they had a second conference whereby they felt the push to go into the marketplace, that is the workforce, and call themselves workforce warriors. And as a result of that, they founded the Daniel Institute in 1998. Now, the Daniel Institute had 3 areas which they want to focus on. One, which is the return to the Lord. It's an evangelistic kind of outreach. The other one is Action for Life, which is kind of like a discipleship program, and the love for the family, to equip the family, especially the fathers, to return them to the family, ownership, leadership of the family. Now, throughout the whole research that I have, they only focus on the return to the Lord because that's the only information they could provide. All right, so this is based on just return to the Lord, and they claim to have a 70% success rate. Now, as you can see, it is very driven by programs. And I also want to note that Reverend James Xia also wrote quite a number of books and all that materials to help this movement. All right, and this movement has a lot of content, meaning to say they have a lot of books, they have a lot of materials for studies. Right, and they organize events, like for example in 1998 they had their first Christmas party, and they had 73 Christmas parties that year alone. But by the time we reached 2007, the parties have grown to be about 200, and today there's 400 parties every year during Christmas time. And approximately about 2,500 people come to know the Lord through those parties. So the moral story is have more Christmas parties. All right. In 2008, they have the Faith, Love, Hope Fellowship in the Science Park. The Hsinchu Science Park was established. That actually had 3 areas that they focused on. One is the government, one is the financial sector, and one is the tech industry. So they tried to push their alumni into the workforce so that they can be a salt and light in those workforce. And I'm just naming some of the things that they've done. From 2007 to 14, the financial sectors, they had 8 retreats in between that period of time. And there's another organization that they founded during that time, the WCFSI. You can read all that in a full report, and over 100 fellowships today just based on the Financial Services Institute itself. Now, in 2011, this is quite exciting. They had the first all-government agency prayer fellowship. I'm not too sure whether we, even in Singapore, for example, where I come from, whether we can even call for that kind of collective effort to get together, because most countries, secular government will not allow things like that, but they pulled that off. So that is quite an amazing thing. And right now they have estimated 800 workforce fellowship groups around Taiwan. They have a lot of in those 3 areas that I mentioned: government, organization, financial sectors, and high-tech companies. Now, this is a movement, right? And as you can see, movements by nature, they spread rapidly, and that's a great thing. However, I think there are also some concerns, and I just want to take ask ourselves a few questions as we examine some of these movements. How's my time? 6 more minutes, or more than that. Okay. All right. Okay. What motivates us to do what we are doing, or for the individuals or that movement? What motivates them to do what they're doing? They ask that question themselves. And in fact, how do they quantify success? In marketplace ministry, through the KPIs, key performance index, or the key results areas. What is the end game plan? When I ask that question too, is there an end game plan for, say, for example, if you want to start a business, what's your end game? End game is what? For example, I was just talking over there in my group about starting schools, because that's what I did. What's the end game? When you reach 800 enrollment, what is the end game plan? There must be something there for them, and that has to be thought through carefully. How do we define whether a strategy is biblical? Right? And it's Marketplace Fellowship Church, because And because of those questions, let me very quickly address two issues here that's found in this research. What are the two issues? Number one is the motivation for missions, why we do what we do. And secondly, the membership of missions, and that is, who is the church? Because unless we understand these two parts, the rest, all the strategy, all the modalities that we have, all the methods that we have, we will just be doing programs and more programs. You may have exponential growth, but they may be a mile wide by an inch deep. So you know what I mean? So therefore, it's important for us to take a few steps back and just look at the overall picture. And this is where I want to change your perspective a little bit. What is this picture quickly? Turn to your friends right now. What's this picture? A frog? Really? A frog? Now, I want you to tilt your head to your right. What is that? Right. You see this now? It's the same picture, but just changing it in a different way. All right. And suddenly you have a different picture altogether. It's a matter of perspective. And in some ways, our identification of what the church is also a matter of perspective. Right? And this is the framework for discussion. Usually we talk about history, and I've covered that very quickly in this report. And of course, we talk about practice and strategies. But in fact, we also need to talk about the biblical and the theological basis of what you're doing. I think that is important. And this is something that I find that perhaps is not as well developed in both reports. All right? So this is my 2 cents worth of it. And of course, we need to contextualize whatever we have. Very good. Okay, I'm on time. All right, okay. And this is overall what I call the mission of God, Missio Dei. And I want to offer to you, just bear with me for the last 5 minutes, going through very quickly, just a change in perspective. Now, let me quickly summarize what I'm trying to say to you here. I believe that we need to have a Trinity as a framework in order for us to understand all that we are doing in missions and even discipleship. Because according to Bevans, he's a scholar, missiologist, he says that Missio Dei, that is mission of God, is the theological basis for Missio Ecclesiae. That is basically, in a word, meaning to say that you need to have the mission of God as the basis, as how you define the mission of the church. All right? And missions is the activity of God rather than the efforts of man or church or organization or even an individual, however great he is. And this is by David Bosch. So the locus for missions is on the doctrine of Trinity rather than ecclesiology or soteriology. And in fact, in movements like Daniel Institute, for example, their focus is on saving souls. Not dissimilar, not unlike D.L. Moody, who once said, I see a sinking ship or a vessel, and God calls me to save as many as you can. That presumes an eschatology that Jesus is going to come back. He's going to come back one day. You better watch out. You better not cry. You better watch out for him telling you. So you know that Jesus is going to come back. So you're panicking and you want to quickly save as many as you can. But is that the motivation for missions? Because if I read my Bible correctly, the motivations for missions is that and a lot more. It has to be centered for God so loved and not so judged the world. So when we think about that, we have to think very carefully about the motivation for missions. So the missions is the mission of God. And this is what Chris Wright said. And in fact, he says this. Fundamentally, our mission, if it's biblically informed and validated, means our commitment or our committed participation as God's people at God's invitation and command in God's own mission within the history of God's world for the redemption of God's creation. The whole church taking the whole gospel into the whole world. That's what Luzon says. So what does it mean then? Missions begins and ends with God's mission. God began his redemption plan already since in the Old Testament, since the fall. It means that missions is not a task. Missions is an identity. And you and I are invited into God's mission. We need to unpack that very quickly. So if that is the overflow, and earlier was quoted, I think was as the Father sent me, so I sent you from John. Now, in the same way, if that is the case, then mission is personal because God is building a family and God is not building an army, right? And mission is ordinary. Any one of us can do missions. And mission is sharing Jesus, not the benefit of salvation. It is not just for spiritual laws and the bridge illustration. All right? And missions is not what we do. Now think of the implication for what? The curriculum development or the materials that you produce. Think of the way you teach, for example. It's very different. Missions is about discipleship then. As what our speaker has been saying to us for the last two mornings, all right? Missions is not what we do, it's who we are. So what? So that's the first thing, and I want you to think through very carefully. And the very second thing is the praxis part, expanding our definition, how we define church. Because our identity will determine our strategies and our partnership and our resource allocation. Now, look at this picture. What is this? Apple, and it automatically asks a few questions, right? What does it do? When do you establish yourself? How should it function? Who are its members? Etc. etc. You do this as a business model. You look at business model and you ask these kind of questions. Now the same thing, look carefully, and I'll just change it. Same questions. Does it change anything? This changes everything, right? Right? You didn't get the pun. Anyway, it's too, right? Right. Now, do you agree with this cartoon? This is a good friend of mine, Andrew Chai, and he's based, I think, in Taiwan right now, if I'm not wrong. He thinks of this as church and this as church, building bigger buildings or everybody sending out. Is it calling in or sending out? I don't think there should be a dichotomy there. It should be both end, right? Thank you very much. Now, there's three perspectives. One is you're the church, you have a mission. Another one is God is there. He gives the world the church, and the church goes around and do whatever he wants, and that's called mission. And finally, God has a mission, and we are in his world. And guess what? All of us are to be the salt and the light to a dark and tasteless world. Now, how many of your churches or organizations are still in the first, is it a time for me to go? How many of you have seen the first or the second part? Most of us are still in the first or second part. Whereas the third part is what we call a missional church. Whereas wherever you are. And this has implications for marketplace ministry because that involves your identity. Because if marketplace is church, then what does it mean? Right? What does it mean? So therefore, the mission of God, business as mission, short-term missions is also mission of God. Crisis relief is also mission of God. All right? Creation care is also mission of God. And what about the others? So I'm just trying to expand your ideas about what the mission of God is. Right? Enough of that. I won't tell you all these things, but you may want to snap this picture and then later on. All right, the implications are there. All right, the implications are there. From programs to processes, demographics to discernment, models to missions, you need to unpack all of that. I don't have time. 20 minutes is just too short. And finally, of course, in the midst of all this crisis, 危机 in Chinese, we have 有危险才有机会. If there's a danger, then there's opportunity. And we are living in a time of tremendous change. And I believe that God has given us an opportunity, and maybe, just maybe, marketplace ministry is the way to go. Right? Just as a closing thought. Right. I think I have a bunch of questions for you to think about. Yeah.